Hi lovely people, I'm back with another book chat this week. I think we're on book chat 18, which is impressive.
Dooby 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 doo dooby 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 Sophie vlogs.
We've got quite a lot of non-fiction slash autobiography this week, so I think I'm going to start with my fiction and then end on like a whole run of non-fiction loveliness. So, first up we have The Universe vs. Alex Woods by Gavin Extance. I bought this because I heard a lot of hype about it on BookTube, and I really enjoyed it. It's about a kid called Alex Woods who, when he is a child, is hit in the head by a meteor. Survives, but as a result of that, he's now got epilepsy. It's sort of about, like, him growing up, but then also this friendship he forms with this old guy who lives close to him. And then, that friendship involves him going on this journey, which is quite controversial, and there's a lot of fallout from that and stuff. And I won't go any more into that because I want to keep it, like, relatively spoiler-free so that you can enjoy it, because it was really good. I really liked this. It was quite funny. I found it very easy to read and amusing. I also really liked, they talk about Kurt Vonnegut a lot in this, and he's not an author who I've actually read anything of, but having now read this, I kind of really want to read some of his stuff, because they start this like book club where they read all of his books and they talk about them, and so there's like quotations from his works throughout this and stuff, and it was just really enjoyable actually. It took me by surprise because I didn't really know what to expect, and there were a lot of moments where I was like, okay, but in a good way. Second of all is Here's Looking at You by Valerie McFarlane. I was ill like a week or so ago, and you know when you're ill and you just want to read something that's just entirely light and frivolous. Essentially, the last 2 weeks I've been to Manchester each weekend, which has been a lot of long train journeys, and so this time when I was ill I was like, oh god, I need to read to fill the time, but I also need to read something that my poor ill adult brain can handle, and that was this. So I've raved about Valerie McFarlane on this channel before just because I think she's lovely, quite frankly. She writes books which I just find quite enjoyable and easy for my brain to cope with and handle. So this is about Hannah was very heavily bullied when she was in school. She is now like woman living life, doing things, and then she has an unexpected meeting with one of the people who bullied her in school, and then it sort of goes from there. We've got some romance. We've got, crucially, the bit I really liked about this is Anna is a historian and she's working on an exhibition all about Empress Theodora and her life and stuff like this. So you've got all this delicious history in it, which I really liked, and now I want to go look up Empress Theodora and just learn a bit more about her, because she sounded like a super interesting girl. Girl, she's an empress, she's a woman, Sophie, get your shit together. So yes, this was just romantic frippery, which was exactly what I needed at the time. After that is a book I read on my Kindle, and that is Treasure Island by Robert Louis Stevenson, because I am 2 seasons into Black Sails at the moment, which, if you don't know it, Black Sails it's by Stars, and it's all about pirates, and they have a mix of pirates, like characters who are based on real pirates, and then a lot of it is actually sort of like a prequel to Treasure Island, and about explaining like how the treasure came to be on Treasure Island and the backstories to all of these pirates you meet on there. And I don't think I've ever actually read Treasure Island before now. Like, I've seen like a Muppet Treasure Island and Treasure Planet, but I don't think I've ever just sat and read the book. So now that I'm 2 seasons in, so I'm like, there's only 4 seasons of the show, so I'm like halfway through by this point. So when I'm reading this, like for example, the first pirate you meet is called Billy Bones. I know who Billy is in the series, and now I'm really interested, because where he is in the book and where he is in the series is quite different, and I'm looking forward to seeing how we get there. But then you also have characters who are in this book who I haven't met in the series now, so when they pop up in the series I can be like, ooh, you're going to be important because I know you, and stuff like that. I just really freaking love Black Sails, okay guys? It's just everything I like. It's got pirates, it's got like high dramatic shit is going down, but also like, I don't know, I just find it really addictive. So I really enjoyed reading Treasure Island. John Silver is an interesting villain. I find him quite compelling, even though I wouldn't trust him at all ever. And yeah, it was super interesting. Now we're going to switch on to the non-fiction. I have a run of 3 autobiographies and then just a separate non-fiction book. So I'm going to do the autobiographies first. I'll do them in the order I read them. So, Fathomless Riches, or How I Went from Pop to Pulpit by the Reverend Richard Coles. I really like the Reverend Richard Coles. I watched, it was during Pride Month, the BBC and Channel 4 did a whole range of Pride-related shows, and I think it was the BBC, could be wrong, could have been Channel 4, yeah, I think it was the BBC, that did one that was all about, I think they called it gay buildings, but it was all about buildings which somehow related to LGBT history, and it was really interesting, and the Reverend Richard Coles was on it, and he talked about Heaven, the nightclub in London, which was really interesting, and I've always found, like, he's on panel shows and stuff sometimes, he's quite funny, so we spotted this, my boyfriend and I, at a tiny little book fair for like a quid, and we were like, hey, let's read about the Reverend Richard Coles' life. And it's super interesting because there's not a lot of people who are like in a pop band in the 80s and have now transitioned to being a reverend. That's like a journey. This was funny at times. It was also very hard at times because obviously being a gay man in the 80s during the outbreak of AIDS and HIV, there were a lot of deaths in this. There are a lot of real people who really did suffer and die, and that is something that he went through, that is obviously something he talks about in this, and I think it's really important to read and honour and remember those stories. So it was an interesting mix of like, ooh, light-hearted, he's quite amusing stuff, and then with some real, like, hitting you in places stuff. As well as that, it was, I mean, I'm not really like a communards, like, aficionado, so I just enjoyed reading about the band stuff. If you are a massive fan, it might not be what you're looking for, because it doesn't really tell you a lot, like, there's not really, like, a lot of insider stuff, it's just all about, like, the complicated relationship the two of them had as they got bigger and all stuff like this, and he doesn't shy away from showing you the moments in which he's not his best self. But it was really interesting, and I'm really glad I read it. I'm really on the drive to read more like own voices, autobiographies of people within the LGBT plus community. I think that's just important, just to recognise that there's not a homogenous experience, and that everyone has their own experiences and their own like stuff based on that, and so I'm just enjoying doing that. Related to what I have just said, the next autobiography I read was Tottering, Unshared Tales of a Life Fully Loaded by Hannah Hart. I've been meaning to get this for ages, but when she announced that this paperback edition was coming out, I really wanted this one because I just really like the cover. I think it's quite pleasing. I like it. I think it's pretty. This was also a very good read, whilst not always being the easiest of reads at times, because Hannah Hart has not had, like, the easiest life at times, which is not something I really knew until I read this. For example, her childhood was quite defined by the fact that her mother has schizophrenia, and how they had to cope with that, and the ways in which, just lots of stuff. I don't really want to spoil anything, but then it's like someone's life, and I'm like, can you spoil someone's life? I don't know. I personally have always liked Hannah Hart because I'm just a fan of her, you know, in as much as you can like someone that you've never met. But personally, for me, Hannah Hart was quite crucial in my coming out journey. Her coming out series really helped me identify the fact that A, I wasn't straight, and then figure out from there what that meant. So it was quite interesting to read her lived experience of that journey for herself. It was really good. It was really enjoyable. I really liked it. She manages to tell you this stuff about her life that's not so great, but she also manages to, you know, keep an underlying message of keeping hope and stuff like that. So this was really enjoyable. The final autobiography is much lighter and much more frivolous, and that is Scrappy Little Nobody by Anna Kendrick. I hauled this in my birthday book haul. This was as fun as I thought it was going to be. On the same train journey where I read Vari McFarlane because my brain was dying, I also read this because this was equally like very, it's very amusing, it's very easy to read, and nothing super. The other two autobiographies have their moments where you're discussing some quite hard topics and difficult topics, stuff like that. This doesn't really do that. This is just like, here's some stuff about my life told in an amusing manner. So yeah, I really liked it. Anna Kendrick seems like a lot of fun. She just, it was, I feel like her tone really comes across well in this. Like, you're reading this and it's quite distinctly her voice, which sometimes with autobiographies, especially if they're ones which might be like co-written with someone else, sometimes the voice does not come through super strong, whereas, I just fucked up with the cover there, whereas this one I really felt it did. So if you like Anna Kendrick, if you like light-hearted autobiographies, I would recommend it. Finally, the last book I'm going to talk about is one that I technically have not quite finished yet, but I am so near the end of that I thought it would be a shame to miss it out of this video. The Fashion of Film, How Cinema Has Inspired Fashion by Amber Butchart. I also hold this in my birthday haul, and I've been reading it ever since my birthday, because it's beautiful and I love it. Sorry. I've just been super duper enjoying it though. We have, it's split into sections, and the sections are sort of split by like genre of film, and then there's like a double page intro, which just gives you like a summation, and then you have like some key films are looked at, and it just sort of tells you a little bit about the film, the impact on fashion. It gives you some examples of the way that, of like pieces that have been influenced by it, and like the cultural impact of it, stuff like that. It's just been quite fun. My favourite sections, which I will say I really liked, oh my god, I really liked all of it. I'm reading this and I'm just like, I liked all of them. Specifically, horror, supernatural, chic was great, especially the Bride of Frankenstein bit, because I really love the aesthetic of the Bride of Frankenstein, and now I really like fashion that's inspired by it. Sci-fi and fantasy, bionic bodies, also super interesting. Love science fiction inspired fashion, so of course I was going to like this chapter. And the musical Spectacular Fashion, also super great. But genuinely, all of this was super fun. As I said previously, I haven't read a lot about fashion. I'm not very up on fashion. I can tell you like, oh, I really like this piece by this person, but I couldn't really tell you anything about the person or the design house or what they're influenced by at all. So now at least I have like a little bit more background knowledge. That's everything for this week's book chat. It's been fun. Every book chat has been fun. I haven't ranted about any of these books, which is good. It's been a really nice little selection of reading this month. I have been a bit ill, so it's been nice to be reading stuff that at least part of it is quite light for my brain to process, and then on the other hand I've had some ones which are less light, but like important to read. That's all I have to say this week. If you have read any of these, I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you have any autobiography recommendations, always love to hear your thoughts, because I cannot stop reading them at the moment. I'm so into them. Until next week, I hope you have a lovely day, and I will see you next time.